children, you all are welcome in my class. Students, today we are going to read lesson number 3 from your English textbook Honeysuckle. The name of this lesson is TERO'S Reward. Students, this is the story of a very thoughtful and loving son. There is a woodcutter, a young woodcutter in this story. His name is Tero, and he is always thinking of the needs of his parents. He always wished to fulfill all sorts of needs of his parents, and for that he works very hard. So the whole story revolves around this leading character, Tero. Because he was very considerate, very helpful, very loving son, so at the end of the story he gets some unexpected help from the Almighty God because of his kind-heartedness towards the people. Now the story begins like this. A young woodcutter named Tero lived with his mother and father on a lonely hillside. All day long he chopped wood in the forest. So here in this story there was a young man. He was a young woodcutter and his name was Tero. He lived with his mother and with his father on a lonely hillside. A hillside where there were not any other people living. So he lived there. All day long he chopped wood in the forest. What was his work? Whole day he was chopping and cutting the wood in the forest. Though he worked very hard, he earned very little money because he was working very hard. He was daily going in the forest, and there he was chopping and cutting the wood, but still he could not earn much money. He was earning very little money, and this made Tero very sad. This made him sad, for he was a thoughtful son and wanted to give his old parents everything they needed. Tero was, though he was working very hard, but still he was not able to earn much money. So this made him very sad because he was very considerate son and he always wanted to give each and every comfort of the life to his old parents. His parents were old, so he thought that he must give them everything they needed. But he was unable to do so because of the lack of money, as he was not able to earn much money by cutting and chopping the wood. One evening, when Tero and his parents were sitting in a corner of their hut, a strong wind began to blow. So one day, what did happen in the evening time when Tero, along with his parents, was sitting in one of the corner of his hut, suddenly a strong wind began to blow. And because it was the winter season, so the wind was very chilly, very cold. And that wind started to come inside the hut of Tero through the cracks in the wall of the hut. And everybody inside the house, means Tero and his parents, they felt very cold. They started to shiver. Suddenly Tero's father said, "I wish I had a cup of sake. It would warm me and do my old heart good." Because Tero's father and mother were old-aged people, so they started to feel the chilliness of the cold very severely. And to protect their body, Tero's father said that, "I wish that at this time I would be having a cup of sake." Children, what is sake? Sake is a Japanese drink. As we drink tea, similarly Japanese drink this drink sake to warm their body, to give warmth to their body. So here Tero's father, he said that, "I wish I would have one cup of sake so that I could warm my old bones." This made Tero sadder than ever, for the heartwarming drink called sake was very expensive. How do I earn more money? He asked himself. When he heard that his father wanted to drink a cup of sake, so he became sadder than ever because he was unable to provide that expensive, that costly drink to his parents, to his father especially. So he started to think that what should he do to earn more money so that he would be able to provide, to give that sake to his old father. How do I get a little sake for my poor old father? He decided to work harder than before. So finally he decided that to provide with that expensive drink to his father, he must work harder than ever, and he should increase his working hours. He should work harder and cut more and more wood in the forest so that he would be able to sell them in a good cost and he would get some extra money. So next morning, Tero jumped out of the bed earlier than usual and made his way to the forest. So what did he do next day, children? Next morning, he got up earlier than ever and then he moved towards the forest. In the forest, he chopped and cut as the sun climbed. As the sun climbed means till the afternoon, when the sun went on the top of his head. So till then he continuously, without taking any rest, he chopped and cut the wood. And soon he was so warm that he had to take off his jacket. Now because he was continuously working, so he started to feel the heat in his body, and for that he had to remove the jacket that he was wearing on his body. His mouth was dry and his face was wet with sweat because he was working very hard. So he started to feel thirsty. He became thirsty and his body was covered with the sweat. My poor old father, he thought, if only he was as warm as I. Here in the forest, Tero was working hard, so he was feeling warmth in his body. At that time, he thought of his father, that if my father would also be feeling same warmth at home, it would be very good for him. And with this thought, he again started to work hard. And with that, he began to chop even faster, thinking of the extra money he must earn to buy the sake to warm the old man's bones. So children, when the thought of his father came to his mind, he started to chop. He began to chop faster than ever, and because he wanted to earn extra money so that he could buy that sake for his father. Then suddenly Taro stopped chopping. What was that sound he heard? Could it possibly be rushing water? When Taro was cutting and chopping the woods, suddenly he heard some sound and he stopped chopping. What was that sound? He had never heard that sound ever before in that forest, in that area where he was chopping and cutting the wood. So he listened very carefully and he came to know that it was the sound of some rushing water. Taro could not remember ever seeing or hearing a rushing stream in that part of the forest. Taro was daily visiting the forest and there he had never seen any type of water or stream or some waterfall inside that forest. So he was trying to recall whether he had ever seen or ever heard any such rushing stream sound in that particular area of the forest. The axe dropped out of his hands and he ran in the direction of the sound because he was very thirsty. So the axe that he was having in his hand to cut and chop the wood, that axe dropped from his hands and he ran towards the direction from where the sound of rushing stream was coming. Tero saw a beautiful little waterfall hidden behind a rock. Kneeling at a place where the water flowed quietly, he cupped a little in his hands and put it to his mouth. Now, as soon as Tero saw that beautiful little waterfall that was hidden behind a big rock, so what did he do? He knelt at a place where the water was flowing quietly without any much movement, and there he filled a little water in his hands, in his palms, and then he drank it. When he drank, he was surprised. He thought, was it water or was it sake? He was surprised that it was not water, it was sake, that delicious, precious drink. So, to confirm it, he tasted it again and again, and always it was the delicious sake instead of cold water. As many times as he could drink that water, he found that it was not a water, it was the delicious sake, that precious, that expensive drink that his father wanted to have to warm his body. Tero quickly filled the pitcher he had with him and hurried home. Tero became very happy. So, because now he would be able to give that precious, expensive drink to his father. So, quickly, what did he do? He filled a pitcher. What is pitcher, children? It is a pot that we use at our home. It is a mud pot made of mud that we use at our home to fill the water to make it cold. So that young woodcutter, he filled the pitcher and quickly moved towards his home. When he reached home, he gave a cup of that sake to his father, his old father, and father was delighted with the sake. As he drank that sake, he was very happy. After only one swallow of the liquid, he stopped shivering and did a little dance in the middle of the floor. As soon as his father swallowed that sake, a small part of that liquid sake, he stopped shivering. He stopped feeling cold and he started to dance in the middle of the floor of the house. That afternoon, a neighbor stopped by for a visit. Tero's father politely offered her a cup of the sake. The lady drank it greedily and thanked the old man. Then Tero told her the story of the magic waterfall. So, what did happen, children, then? That same afternoon, one of the neighbors of this family, she visited Tero's house, and Tero's father offered her a cup of sake. The lady drank it very greedily because she wanted to have some more, and then she thanked the old man. Now Tero told that lady the story of the magical waterfall that he came across in the forest, and how did he fill the pitcher and brought it to home. Listening all this, that lady thanked them for the delicious drink, and hurriedly, very quickly, she left the house of Tero. But till the evening, she had spread the news of this magical waterfall throughout the whole village. Now everybody in the village was knowing the story of the magical waterfall. So that evening, there was a long procession of visitors to the woodcutter's house. Each man heard the story of the waterfall and took a sip of the sake. In less than an hour, the pitcher was empty. Now that lady had spread the news of the magical waterfall in whole village. So all the village people, they started to come to Tero's house to taste that magical water, that sake from that magical waterfall. So they came one by one as a procession, and they heard the story of that magical waterfall from Tero, and they also tasted that delicious sake. And within half an hour, the whole pitcher became empty. The pitcher that Tero had filled from the magical waterfall. Next morning, Tero started for work even earlier than the morning before. Now next day, Tero got up early in the morning from the usual hours of his waking up, and he started to move towards the forest, because now he thought that first he would go to the magical waterfall. There he would fill his pitcher, and then he would start working and cutting and chopping the wood. So he carried with him a largest pitcher that he owned, for he intended first of all to go to the waterfall. This time he carried the largest pitcher that he had in his house, because his intention was to bring more and more sake at home. When he reached it, he found to his great surprise all his neighbors there. What did happen? As soon as he reached near that magical waterfall, he found that all the neighbors were already present there, and they all were carrying pitchers, jars, buckets, anything they could find to hold the magic sake. Then one villager knelt and held his mouth under the water to drink. So those village people, they were carrying the big pots that they could bring with them. They were having pitchers, they were having big jars, big buckets with them, so that they could fill more and more sake in their pots, whatever pots they were having with them. Now one of the villagers, what did he do? He knelt and he started to drink the water from that, or you can call it a liquid from the waterfall. He drank again and again, and then shouted angrily, "Water, nothing but water." Other also tried, but there was no sake, only cold water. When that old man, he drank the water, he drank the liquid from the waterfall. He did it many times, but every time he found only the water and no sake there. So he shouted very angrily. He became very upset and shouted with great anger. What did he say? "It is only water and nothing else. It is not sake. It is only water." Now listening this, other people, other neighbors also tried the water from the magical fountain, magical waterfall, but they could only find the cold water. Children, why did this happen? Because these people were the greedy people. They were thinking of their own self only. That's why the magical waterfall did not give them sake, but only the cold water. Now children, see what will happen next. "We have been tricked," shouted the villagers. "Where is Tero? Let us drown him in this waterfall." But Tero had been wise enough to slip behind a rock when he saw how things were going. He was nowhere to be found. So now the villagers, they turned very upset, very angry, and they shouted very loudly that Tero had tricked them, had deceived them, had cheated them. So they wanted to search Tero and they wanted to drown him in the same waterfall. So they started to search Tero here and there. But Tero was a very wise man, because he had already guessed the situation. So he had slipped, he had hid behind a rock, a big rock, and nobody from the villagers was able to find him anywhere. So with great anger, they left the place. They went back to the village. Muttering their anger and disappointment, the villagers left the place one by one. Tero came out from his hiding place. Was it true? He wondered. Was the sake a dream? Now when everybody left the place, when all the villagers went back to their homes, with great anger, muttering and shouting on Tero with great disappointment, they left the place. So now the Tero came out of that big rock from where he was hiding, and now he was wondered whether it was true whether the sake that he had filled yesterday from the magical waterfall was that a dream only. He wanted to make it sure. Once more he caught a little liquid in his hand and put it to his lips. So to test it, what did he do? Again he went near the magical waterfall, and there he took a little liquid in his hands and he tasted it. It was the same fine sake. To the thoughtful son, the magic waterfall gave the delicious sake, and to everyone else, it gave only cold water. Now he came to know, because he was a sincere boy, a sincere man, an honest person, so that magical waterfall had gifted him with that precious delicious drink, sake. And to the other people, because they were greedy people, they were thinking for themselves only, so that magical waterfall did not give them any sake. Instead of that, he gave them only cold water. The story of Taro and his magic waterfall reached the Emperor of Japan. Now, this story also reached in the ears of the Emperor of Japan. Japan's emperor, he also heard the story of Taro and his magic waterfall. So, what did he do? He sent for the young woodcutter and rewarded him with 20 pieces of gold for having been so good and kind. When he heard the story of Taro and his magic waterfall, so he called young woodcutter Taro to his palace and he rewarded him with 20 pieces of gold. Why? Because Taro was very good and very kind-hearted man. Then he named the most beautiful fountain in the city after Taro. Then he also did one more thing, that he named the most beautiful fountain in his city after the name of this young woodcutter, Taro. This, said the emperor, was to encourage all children to honor and obey their parents. And Emperor of Japan declared that he had done this because he wanted to encourage all the children in his kingdom to honor and respect their parents. So students, what is the message that you get from this story? Yes, this story tells us that we must always listen to our elders, our parents. We should always take care of them. Whenever they need something, we must try our best to provide them with those things that they want in their life. We should always think of the comforts that they should get because they are old. So, students, now we have come to the end of this story. I hope you have understood. If you have any doubts, you can comment in the inbox of this video.